As a sales professional, you gotta stay curious. This is one of the critical elements of an effective disco. And on today's episode, my guest Denise Bachmann is gonna demonstrate how to flawlessly run a disco. Oh, curiosity's all over this thing. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I have the one and only Denise Bachmann. Denise is coming on the show, and she's going to outline and share with us how she runs an effective disco and why it's so important for us to be able to go to the root cause when we're doing a discovery call. Oftentimes we miss this as a sales professional, but we got to make sure we get to the root. And on today's episode, she's going to lay that out for you. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll notify you every time we drop an episode. As we dive in, you get a chance to learn a little bit about the challenge that we have right now we're facing as sellers and how and why it's important to get to that root cause. And you'll see how Denise does this. We actually do a straight role play, and it's absolutely amazing. It was fun. So check it out. Denise, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Super excited.
Of course. I'm excited to have you on the podcast. And, you're out there on LinkedIn sharing a lot of insights. And many of us in the sales world, we're looking for, obviously, ways that we can be better. It's tougher, I feel, because there's so many people and doing it. And obviously so many distractions, and it's becoming buyers are leery, but good sellers are able to break through and to be effective. And I want to get from you as somebody I put on a pedestal that is producing great content that's helping us to be able to break through that. Take a second and tell us about your practice and what you do with your business.
Yeah, so my practice is really centered around my genius zone, which is being curious. That is my zone of genius. And so when I go, I most certainly coach, I consult, I can act as a fractional sales leader with my Sellovatorz program. But it is really about going back to humanizing sales, which is really my vision, is to elevate sales, or at least do my part to elevate sales so that it becomes a noble profession again. Because what I know we're seeing is a lot of these salespeople who are just going out and automating their processes. We're engaging with bots or automated messages. And not only are we distracting our prospects and our buyers, we're devaluing sales in such a way that it's making it harder for those of us who are really good at it and who love it and are passionate about it and who really want to help our clients or our prospects or our buyers really do something, solve their problems, right? And I think that's been the biggest challenge. And so my practice is really centered around bringing the human back into the sales process. Hopefully that answered your question.
It does. And I've been just putting some little notes here about that. Several things that stood out to me was, one, the humanizing side of things. Two was the, a lot of the automations. And then three, the idea of curiosity. So I think we're going to have some good conversation, because this ties perfectly with what we are, with what we have on the agenda. One of the things we talked about was, because of the way we're seeing stuff like that in sales right now, it is, I think people are trying to speed through the sales process and trying to get to the sale as quick as possible, which naturally would be great. And because of that, they're missing things. I want to talk about root cause, because I think this stems from your excitement and your desire for curiosity. Let's talk about root cause and some of the probable cause, and why is that an issue, especially in a discovery phase. Is that cool?
Yes. Well, I would like to say, I feel like we are speeding up so much that I think we need to take a step back. And that old adage, let's slow down to speed up, holds so true, because you do have to take time to actually inquire and ask questions of your prospect and your buyer, because the reality is most of our buyers know they have a problem to solve to, right? They have what we would consider in most times a systemic problem. They want to solve to that. They usually don't even know what the probable root cause is. They tend to just really want to solve to that one project that they were tasked with or that they know is happening. It's when we start to, if they say, hey, I need to solve to problem A. Okay, well, tell me about problem A. Okay, then you ask them follow on question and follow on question and follow on question so that you start to get them down to this probable root cause that, oh, by the way, they usually didn't know anyway. And they get this aha moment. So it does a couple of things for you. One, it really builds this trust and credibility because now you're showing them that you care and that you want to help them solve to their problem. And you give them the ability to come to a realization that you're solving to a much bigger problem. And when you can do that, you've built a relationship that enables you to really go together on this journey in this buying and selling journey together, rather than you pushing them, pulling them through the journey, or them pushing, trying to take the journey away, right? You're marching and going about it together so that you're solving their problem and not just trying to sell them something.
Yeah, and I think that part there at the end is where I think that makes a big difference. I've found when I've done deals where I was just doing the featured benefits, trying to just get through, buyers would come back and say that was expensive, right? But when you come as the second part that you're saying there, and I came and got to the root cause and we discovered it together, they're like, holy moly, all right, we need to fix this. And money doesn't
Mhm.
become an issue of that. But it's easier said than done, though, Denise. It's like, to say, the great philosopher Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So I want to get like, so with that, I have this plan and I want to have a great discovery call with the prospect, but how do I ensure that I'm getting to the root cause? What are some technique? How do you make it happen? And I would love to see this in real life. And maybe I put you on the spot here, but maybe we could pretend I'm the prospect and you're the seller, and we can go through a scenario. But I would love to just understand that thoroughly.
Yeah, so I do a few things prior to even jumping on the call. First,
Sure.
I make sure that I understand what my intent is for a call. And that's more than just a goal, right? Or tactical steps. It's really uncovering. Like, I've got a client, I tell them, because of the nature of their business, qualify in or out as quickly as possible. That's your intent for your first meeting with this client. That's what you want to walk away with. But then it's looking at what does good look like? What does great
Mm,
look like? So if I'm going to qualify in or out, and if they are going to be in potentially based on the conversation that we have, what does great look like at the end? What do I want to accomplish? What does good look like? So you have those in mind already because it's not based on the script. We all should probably have our discovery questions that you want to get answered in that session, but it's more about allowing the conversation to flow and what I call being audible ready. And by the way, that wasn't something that I tagged or coined myself. It was something that I learned from one of my corporate stints. Well, it was about 11 and a half year stint, but in one of my corporate gigs, right? And it was about being audible ready. So it's having a list of questions that get you to good and great, but ultimately that are going to qualify you in or out, but recognizing that you need to be fluid in that conversation. And maybe you ask the first question and you may or may not get to the second or third, or maybe you go from first to 10th and then you're coming back to second or third. But really, without having to navigate those, it comes through conversation. And the only way to do that is to make sure you've done a little bit of homework before you get on that call. That is
mm.
first and foremost. Making sure that you understand the client that you're looking at, what some of their problems are, what their buying persona is, leveraging some of those AI and automation tools that we have access to now so that you can be much more educated and knowledgeable before you even get on that call.
So who's the ideal customer for you?
My ideal client today are funded startups, and I'm changing my ICP a bit, but
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, I'm changing like the funding threshold a bit, but it's been funded startups.
All right, so let's run through that one. I'm a funded startup. We sell a, let's say it's a CRM, and it's our CRM is, it HubSpot's going for those bigger clients, but we are competing against the SMB space for HubSpot, and we feel that we have something very nimble for it. Um, and I'm the founder-led sales. You're gonna come in and maybe hire. I'm looking to hire someone to help me to build out my team and to build things up from the ground. Um, my problem that I'm perceiving is that um, I need a I need a system, and I don't have a system, so therefore, um, sales. My problem right now is my shareholders are telling me we need to grow. So I need to get more sales. So that's my problem. Uh, so I need sales to grow, but I want to see how do we get to the root of that, because that's probably not the root problem that you probably come across. And by the way, is this stuff that you get on a regular basis with these guys?
Yes. 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 Now, usually I've done a little bit of my homework, so I
Yeah,
know a little bit more about them, right?
yeah,
But we can go with just this, right?
yeah.
So I'm
Because
going
the
to say,
key, I want to tell our listeners, the key here is I just want you to see how she goes about getting to the root cause of the situation. And feel free to to elaborate and make up stuff in here, based on the background, because we didn't do that. But hopefully you guys can see how Denise masterfully does this, to get down to the root issue. So take it
awesome.
away,
All right.
Denise.
All right. So, Donald, thanks for having me today. I appreciate the time. I've done a little bit of homework. It seems like you are a competitor to HubSpot. You're really looking at the small to medium sized businesses. And your challenge, so you shared with me in your message to me, was that you really needed to improve your sales. Your shareholders are a little bit upset with you because your sales are not where they should be. Would you agree with that?
100%. Last Friday had a meeting, and yeah, I got ripped across the coals. So I know how to sell and I'm doing stuff, but there's 6 million things to do in a startup, and I can't do it all on my own. So I know we need to get the sales force going. So that's my problem right now. I need a sales force in place, and so get my shareholders off my back, and we can increase revenue. How can you help me make that happen?
Well, first, I'd like to know, tell me a little bit about what your sales cycle looks like.
Typically about a 3 month sales cycle. It's we have initially we're getting some inbound leads, but I'm also doing some outreach, and we do a typically a disco, and then I can do a little demo at that point, demonstrate some of our stuff. Usually they want to get a proposal, and we review a proposal. If not in that next meeting, or if not that disco meeting, and then we they're closed. And yeah, so that's my process.
Awesome. Okay. Now talk about, you've gotten inbound leads. About how many are inbound, would you say, of all the calls that you're getting?
Right now, probably about 47% to 50% of them.
And how are you getting those inbound leads?
We have did some a lot of works on SEO, and doing some ads targeting people in that space.
So visibility, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Then what about, of those 47 to 50%, how many do you think are converting?
right now 25%.
Do you know why they converted? Like what was the process to get them to convert?
I'm not full. I mean, I would assume that maybe it comes down to the price, the features that we have that's different than HubSpot. Um, they don't have to spend as much with us in comparison to get started. And I mean, it's my product, but maybe I'm biased, but I would say it's a little bit easier to use, less convoluted than HubSpot.
Now, what about the reverse of that? What do you think the problem was with the 75% that did not convert?
Probably just the fact that we're not that's a very good one, because price is not usually the issue. I probably would say functionality. Maybe we're not as good as I thought when it comes to the comparison to HubSpot.
Okay, let's table that for a minute. Let's go to your outreach. What does your outreach look like?
Starting off with a lot on LinkedIn, and then from there, once I've grabbed tension, then I come to kick off personalized emails outreach. So personalize it from my LinkedIn experience with them to an email outreach, and doing phone calls in there, referencing our interaction from social, and trying to go for the bigger SMBs, not the one-off individual for those, because of this outreach.
Mhm.
But that's typically what it would look like. So social, email, phone.
What is your conversion rate for those, do you think?
Probably less than obviously the inbound, but say if I get on a call with somebody, probably about a 10 to 15%, from a contact call to a closed deal.
Okay. And if you're looking at the 10 to 15%, I'm going to ask you the same questions that I
Sure.
did for the inbound. Tell me, what do you think? the success? Why did they choose to go with you guys in that those 10 to 15% of people? What was their reason?
Think I'm able to articulate the difference, and giving us a shot. If they give us a shot, they can see some of the value in that. I'll probably say that's definitely what it would be. Um, just a little bit easier and less expensive to get started. Then not less convoluted. They don't necessarily need a separate team member to get going with the CRM. And then to why we are not converting the rest, that's probably going back to maybe don't have all the functionality. We're just comparing to HubSpot, but HubSpot has a little bit more, especially on the project roadmap. We have stuff that we want to get to, but I'll probably say maybe they have a little bit more than what we do. Or
It seems to me, though, based on what you're telling me, the differentiator is that you're easier to use and less expensive.
hmm
So, have you been messaging that as your differentiator when you're in both the outreach and on the inbound?
I'm probably am not doing it as clearly as I should, Denise. I try. I think so, but
And then what about the fact you've mentioned twice now that you think it might have to do with functionality, that you are concerned that it maybe doesn't have the same functionality? In all the conversations that you've had, have they specified that there wasn't the functionality that you were looking for?
they come up with something, but I read between the lines, and I probably and I come back to that probably being it.
Yeah. So between the lines. Hold on, I'm furiously writing notes, which I think is absolutely key when you're doing a sales call, right?
Yeah,
Um, so you feel like you've been reading between the lines, but if you're only closing on average, let's just say it's cumulative. Let's take
yeah,
25 and add 15%. So you're closing about 40% of your business. That means you've been 60% of your business is shot,
yeah.
or you've kind of sifted through and they're not closing. You think it might be because of the functionality. So how could you go back and uncover whether it truly is functionality?
Hmm. I mean, I think probably just if they're calling them again, trying to have more conversation with them, go back and through some of the recordings. But probably those are the only ways I could think about doing that.
Well, I would say just from this is not what I would recommend on building a sales force, right? You asked me,
Yeah,
how could I build a sales force or how could I help you do that? But I would say that it would be super important if as you start to build out campaigns, dedicating one campaign to purely understanding those that you lost, your, lost deals, why you lost them, uncovering, going back to them. And, sometimes if you've already established that's a great relationship, especially if they're inbound, where you lost the majority of the business, right? If you could actually, you lost less
more enough.
business there than on the outreach, but on the inbound, they came to you, so you should
Yeah.
have the right to go back to them and say, "Hey, look, I know I lost the deal with you, but tell me what it was," and really uncover. When you do that, that'll help you decide whether or not you have a problem with your actual solution rather than your sales process. That would be one thing. The second is I would also consider, again, not going back to sales. I would also consider, just based on what I hear, you don't seem super comfortable about messaging the differentiator, and that you've got a succinct message that carries across both as you do outbounding as well as for inbounding. So I would challenge you to do that. Does that sound like a fair understanding of what I heard you say essentially?
Yeah, that sounds pretty fair.
Okay, so I think that's one thing that we need to look at as well. Now, let's talk then about the sales, right? Because you've been doing really all the sales yourself. So,
Yeah.
how much time a day do you spend selling, would you say?
Probably say the majority of the time right now, probably about 60 to 70, when I'm not in meetings with developers and the uh, being a HR manager.
I get that. I get that. I'm a one man show, so I get that. I have to run I have to be the all to everyone. Okay, but let's talk then about as well what types of campaigns when you're outbounding, because you're only getting on the outreach about a 10 to 15% success rate. So what are your campaigns look like? Have you built very multiple different campaigns? Are you running one campaign?
Yeah, multiple. Use a navigator to target HubSpot customers, and then What I've done is try to go after people, one with new marketing leaders, and another one with new sales leaders um, into the organization. Um, so that's how I've been really separating them to the two right now.
Okay, so two campaigns, one focused on marketing leaders and the other one focused on sales leaders, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And what does your workflow look like when you're creating this campaign?
Yeah, go into Navigator, and then from Navigator, I go into engage with them on LinkedIn, build out the list. I put that list in um, into tools like Apollo to get their detail information, and I enrich that list, whether it's using Apollo tool or tools like Full Enrich. But I enrich that list, and then to try to get the accuracy information, proper email, and then once I felt that I've had some kind of connection with them, accept my connection request, I kick off the campaign, just so I can try to get that more higher engagement. The first email is hyper personalized towards our original convo. Some of the other ones after that are focused on the challenge that they might have in their role with the CRM, and experimented with video, just as in the second email, just to see if as they open in my email, then maybe they can see a little bit more and get a little bit more from the email. So and doing phone calls, typically every couple days, making a phone call if I don't get a hold of them, and if I have mobile, I'll drop a text message um, as well in those outreach. But yeah, that's typically it, though.
Well, I would say, in comparison to many that I engage with, they don't have as precise a workflow as you do. Because if you, in case you don't know, it takes now anywhere from 15 to 20 touch points to engage your prospect or your client. And it takes anywhere from 7 to 9 times before a message resonates with your prospect or your buyer. So it
Wow.
seems like you've got a ton of touch points in here. And I love that you're switching it up. But let me ask you then, too, with all of this, let's think about what your goals are for this year. If we're thinking about implementing a sales team, you've got two campaigns, you've got some challenges in that you might consider looking at your messaging and your differentiators, right?
Yeah.
And maybe going back to why you lost, so from a functionality perspective. But if you're going to add a salesperson, what are your goals for this year that you want to achieve
Well,
with
I
sales?
I know I probably need to take some time for them to get up to speed, but I want to get them going as soon as possible. We're in February right now, but um, I want to get them to the point where they're booking 3 appointments on their own per week, supplementing that with some of our inbound. But if they're booking three and they're getting 2 to 3 from us from inbound, they 6 appointments. We expect at least where I'm at, probably a 20% close rate for that. So you know, on so 20% close rate on those 6 appointments per week. Course of the month, you're looking at 20, 24 appointments that they're getting for the month. 20%. I don't know if that's too much to ask for a close rate.
Actually, you can have a much higher close rate if, but that would, we would take a little bit of extra time. In the next
Yeah.
meeting, I'd like to really dig in a bit deeper on what you're doing, because part of implementing a new sales team is making sure you have process and technique in place to support them, right? But I want to go back to, so from a dollar perspective, what does that mean to you from a dollar perspective? Rounded.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, overall, we need to get over the $1 million mark end of the year. Right now, I'm bringing in to by myself and with inbound maybe about three. So I
Three
need to
thousand, 300K.
300,000
Okay,
for the year. So
300,000.
last year I brought in 300,000. I want to get over the $1 million mark. So
Okay. So thinking about 300,000, that was just for last year. How long have you been in business?
just a little bit over a year and a half.
Okay. All right. So just just to put things into perspective, I do think it's really important for us. I think a million ARR is definitely something to strive for. But if you only did 300,000 last year and you want to bring on new salespeople, we might want to set, I would suggest in a future call when we sit down and look at what your real goals are, we might want to set maybe 1 million as your stretch and something a bit more attainable. Because I think one of the challenges that we find with most sales organizations is they set these goals, but they don't know how they're going to get there. Now you've already established that you've got, once at least 6 meetings a week and 24 a month. I think that's amazing. And you should be able to get there, but we've also got to give some time for ramp up, right? So we've got to
Mm,
consider ramp up time. So they'll have less than a year to have gotten to the 300,000. When you hire a sales rep, you're going to have to be spending a little bit of time with them, right? So you're going to be losing a little bit of your productivity as it relates to sales. But working together, you should be able to get to at least higher than 300,000 for sure at a minimum, right? But maybe we need to set some more realistic goals. That being said, though, I think what are your biggest concerns with your stakeholders? Is it just that you haven't hit your revenue goals, or what is it in particular other than that, if anything?
I mean, I think the bigger thing is, biggest concern with it is everybody wants, they believe in a product and they see that it can get results. And I think what they were just hoping that we are getting there faster than where we are right now. And I thought I could do it mostly by myself, but I think that's where, we need to get the help.
All right, so I'm going to echo back what I think I've heard throughout this conversation. So add anything that I might have forgotten or anything that you might think of that may be different or that I left out, or that you might remind you of something else that you forgot. So you're doing right now, your ultimate goal is to hire a sales team, whether that's one, two, or three. We haven't qualified and had any conversation around that, because primarily what you're trying to strive for is that you've got to hit some financial goals faster than what you have. Your shareholders are a little anxious because they think you have a great product and you haven't achieved the goals thus far, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also yourself, on average, that there's a 3 month sales cycle. You've been closing about 47 to 50% of your inbound leads, which is actually pretty good. Although they could be a bit higher, but your outreach is only at 25%, which I think could be even greater once we really uncover a little bit more about the sales process, which we're not going to have time for today, but that's okay, because what I want to continue to do is just summarize what I've heard thus far, because I think that'll lead us into our second call, which is, you do normally discovery, demo, hopefully then proposal. But one of the things that you've uncovered is, it's not price is the reason why they're not doing business with you. What you
Hmm.
think it might potentially be is that the product doesn't have all the functionality that they would like. Correct?
That's correct.
And you also think that uh, while you understand the differentiators are that it's that I think the differentiators. Hold on, sorry, I wrote them down somewhere. You're less expensive is one of the key
Hmm.
differentiators, right? You're less expensive, easier to use, which is another one, because we know HubSpot can be sometimes a bit tedious, right? You run multiple campaigns, so you've got two good ones, it seems like, new marketing leaders and new sales leaders, and you're able to actually create a really sustainable and amazing, what I hear is amazing, campaign workflow. So you're hitting all the different touch points, you're doing it in a way that allows you to personalize. So that really attributes to that overall, 25% of your inbound leads were closures and 10 to 15 on the outreach. I'm sorry, I hit my numbers wrong. So on average, you're talking about 35 to 40% close rate. So those you're showing is really working very effectively. But I think what I'm hearing is overall is that we really need to look at your potential differentiators and your overall messaging. We also need to build a campaign around those that you potentially lost business with and uncover if it truly was functionality, or have them really echo back with you what they heard that made them or caused them to not close business with you. And then we need to really look at how do we build a sales team for you, whether that's one or two or three people, so that we can get to your, a million goal. as your stretch goal, but we ultimately then need to also refine your numbers so they're a little bit more realistic, so that you can share that with your shareholders so they won't be so disappointed, that they'll actually map to exactly what you plan to accomplish. Would that be all fair that I summarized?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Then what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like to schedule another appointment. So let's look at your calendar right now before we get off, and let's schedule another time where I can come back and actually put what I think might be a kind of an idea for a solution. I'll send some of them back and forth with you by text and email so that we can make sure that by the time we get to the call, it's a super effective call. But we'll go back through some of your challenges that you've had, and then I'll share with you what I think we can do to solve based on those challenges. Does that sound fair?
Sounds fair.
All right, awesome.
Well, I
And then
love it.
this is where we would do that.
All right, this is awesome. Give it a round of applause, everyone. Give it a Denise. So Denise, let's. So the problem that that Donald had here is he felt that initial problem that shareholders want to increase, they need to improve sales. We could have taken that and you probably could have say, hey, skip all of it and said, let's go to what I'll do. Here's what my program worked. Let's set up a time and I'll go over a proposal with you. Which in fact, I haven't even gotten to that part yet. You didn't much go into pitching any of your services, particularly yet. But what would you say, based on your digging, you came to as the root of a root cause, a root problem that Don was facing that he probably didn't realize in
Yeah,
that?
so I think it probably has to do with some functionality and the fact that he doesn't understand the differentiators and who his target market is, right? Because
Yeah,
there are going to be some that need that functionality, and why do they need it, right? So that once you uncover why, if it truly is functionality, and whether or not that function why that functionality didn't fit, like what size were they, what was, what type of sales were they doing. If you uncovered a bit more about their potential clients that they lost, then you would uncover more precisely who their true ICP would be,
mm,
I think. Right. So I think it's uncovering, one, that they really probably do have functionality issues. And if they do, then what can they do to make sure that they are getting to the point where they are truly competitive with HubSpot? Because really, it doesn't sound like they are really competitive right now, just
yeah,
based on what we had uncovered, right? And the other is, if it is functionality, there's still going to be an ICP that serves them, and it probably isn't going to be all the ones that said no. It's going to be the ones that said yes. So why did they say yes, and why did the no say no? And then you can refine who your ICP is. And once you solve to those two things, then you can bring on a salesperson, or
mm.
simultaneously in parallel, then you can bring on a salesperson, because bringing on a salesperson to sell exactly what you've been selling is still only going to get you the same,
The
if
same
not a bit
numbers. Yeah.
less type of results, right?
And I love how you under promised and then with the hopes of the over delivery. But maybe I haven't said that, we could probably hit that 1 mil, but let's come back, throttle back to that, a reasonable number. If that's going to be like 700 or seven, whatever. But the point is, like, if I'm doing it and he's doing it or she, and maybe it's multiple sellers that we get, and also maybe we fix this and your close rate or your outbound and your inbound rate improved by 4 or 5%, you're cooking with hot chicken grease at this point, right? But
Exactly.
you can't figure that out unless you fix the issues here. And I would leave that call as Donald realizing, crap, without you saying it, I'm probably not converting as much. I think she's trying to get me that I'm not converting as many of the people that I possibly could, because I'd probably not given them the right messaging, or I'm getting the wrong individuals in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I tend to do that, and I take them along the journey, right? And in fact, I don't take them, we actually work together on the journey, because then
Yeah.
they uncover when they walk away that isn't what, and I become that partner because I'm helping them uncover what the real problem is. Because if I'd have just thrown them a sales rep, they wouldn't, like we mentioned earlier, they wouldn't have been as successful, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's really about wanting to help them be successful. So I, as Denise, want to help Donald be as successful as possible. And one of the problems I find in all of the organizations that I'm talking with is that they set these lofty sales goals because they have
Hmm.
to hit a specific number. And they're usually, well, first off, there's a whole strategy when you set a goal. It's okay, how are you going to hit that goal? How many clients does it have to take? So, how many calls do you have to make? How many do you have to have in the pipeline, right? Based on your percentage of closure rate. And so then you start figuring out, the tactical ways to get to that number, which most organizations don't do. They do the basics. Okay, well, I need to close, if I'm going to close $1 million, it's going to take me 20 clients, but they don't really know how they're going to get to those 20 clients. And if it's 20 clients, it's going to take them at least, a 6 times or a 3 times pipeline
Yeah.
to get to that, which means you've got to have 60 clients in the pipe that you can potentially close. And to get to those 60, it's going to take you 3 times more than that, which is where I was headed with that 6 times, right? You got to have 6
Yeah.
times of the people or ICPs in your list that you can call on to get down to the 60, then to close the 20, right? And that's on average. Now, maybe your close rates and your outreach is better, but that's on average, right? That we're starting with. So there are a lot of things to work through. But when you set these unrealistic goals, you then frustrate yourself, you frustrate your team, you frustrate your shareholders. And if you can set more realistic goals with then the stretch goals, then it sets better expectations with your shareholders, for yourself and your team, and makes it more achievable, where you can celebrate your wins along the way. You can evaluate, quarterly or monthly or however you do that, and whatever your normal process is, so that you can make sure that you're on target for that, and if not, to adjust accordingly, which people don't do as well as they should either.
Yeah. Well, I love this, and I think this is, let's wrap this up in a sense. If I'm a sales rep or a sales leader, understanding the importance of being curious, which I think you demonstrated so thoroughly, and going deep below the surface level, initial question. What would you say the biggest takeaway you want leaders to leave with from this episode that they can apply to be able to get to the root cause?
Yeah, so I think it's probably 2 things. One is they have to live with this mindset that you have to slow down to speed up. I think we, as leaders, as sales reps, we are constantly go, 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 because we've got these metrics to meet. And I think we have to, in the way that we sell today, we have to let go of those metrics, focus on quality instead of quantity. So slow down before you can speed up. And then it's really, again, going back to make sure that when you're working with your sales reps, that you set the intention with them before they walk into their meeting. Make sure that they have what good and what great looks like. And that while they may have a set of questions, that they don't have to follow all of those questions. Learn to be audible ready. And that takes time with coaching with your sales team, right? I think we have to get away from just being leaders and going through pipeline and deal review. We actually have to coach them and do some role playing. I mean, it's even as simple as, I do this simply. Donald, how are you doing today? What is your response?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great, but tell me what's so great about today, right?
Ooh,
See,
yeah.
and that's what people, even it's as simple as that, but forcing them to start to role play and ask more questions and think in ways that your competitor, the other sales reps are not. That differentiates you, and you start building a partnership with them, rather than, again, trying to just sell them something.
I love this. Denise, this was clearly demonstrated today, but if folks want to get in touch with you, how did the best go about doing so today?
I am on LinkedIn, everywhere on LinkedIn.
She's on LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen. Denise, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Super
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
I had fun, so thank you very much.
Told you it was great. That was Denise Bachmann. Please go ahead and connect with her on LinkedIn. Tell her that you heard her here on the Sales Evangelist podcast. And I would love for you to share what's working for you as the result of what you've learned today. Did you take this and apply it? What are some of the success you saw, things that changed, blah, blah, blah. Would love to hear it. You can connect with us. And if you're looking for ways that you can practice and do role plays like this, you should join our mastermind. It's the salesevangelist.com/mastermind. Would love to have you join, where it's a cohort where sellers like yourself come together and work and learn and improve and engage in your sales skills. And would love to have you check it out. Go to the salesevangelist.com/mastermind. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to raise the level of thinking. Most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things. See you on the next one.